Hi, everyone, and welcome to the bathroom break. Okay, I'm going to try to keep this intro short, but this is a project I've been working on for a really long time, but I just wanted to make sure that I could execute on it correctly, and I'm really excited to start sharing it with you. This is a new interview series I've been working on, and I've been lucky enough to start traveling around and interviewing fighters, coaches, and other well-known people in combat sports. Oh, and if you haven't gotten it yet, the title is meant to be a play on the whole oh, it's the girls fight, bathroom break. I don't know, I thought it was funny, but this series is for everybody, not just the girls. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the episode here. Last week, I was fortunate enough to be able to sit down with John Wood, the head coach and owner at Syndicate MMA. Syndicate is a huge MMA gym in Vegas. They have something like 900 students right now, and John has been a coach and a gym owner for about 20 years. He's coached to fighters like Merab Dvalishvili and Khalil Rountree, and Syndicate's kind of in its moment right now. They have such an incredibly high win rate at the moment. One of the main reasons I wanted to interview John is that he's one of those coaches, and not all coaches are like this, right? He's one of those coaches that you can tell is very intentional and has put a lot of thought behind who he wants to be as a coach, the responsibility that means, and the culture that he wants to create at Syndicate. Coaching is the backbone of MMA, right? But we hear so much more about the fighters than we do about the men and women behind them. Also, fair warning, I lost my voice last week, so I'm listening back to this episode and my voice is definitely a little bit more gravelly than usual, so sorry. So you're originally from Vegas?
I originally from Texas. I've been out here since the second grade. It's gonna age me a little bit, but 38 years, I think now.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up here pretty much as close to as you could be. Yeah, this is my hometown.
Got it. So you've been essentially in the capital of MMA for decades now.
Yeah.
What's it been like to see the sport evolve over the years?
It's crazy. I lucked out. Well, I wouldn't say lucked out. I kind of had the foresight when I grew up out here. There really wasn't much to do, so it's just like most of the other kids out here getting in trouble and doing stupid stuff. And I had to go away for a little bit, not to jail, but I left town. I went to Arizona. I actually started training in Arizona out in Phoenix. Is when I got into MMA about 17, and I fell in love with it right away. I had always been a huge fan of the UFC. I watched the very first UFC at my friend's house, pay-per-view, and I loved it. And I started training. I fell in love with it even more, and I started getting into it, and realized, okay, I kind of want to maybe fight and do this stuff. And then realized that Vegas at the time, there was only 2 or 3 gyms out here. Las Vegas Combat Club was my original gym where Frank Mir came out of, and, Phil Baroni and some of the crazy guys back in the day. And all my family and friends were here, so I wanted to come back, and it was UFC was starting to pop off, and so Frank, I think, had just gotten in the UFC when I came to the gym. He just had his first fight, and that's where, my first gym, my old coach, Ricardo Perez, um I could see, at that time, all the gyms were either in, industrial areas or ghetto ass places. It was super hard to get to, it wasn't very family or kid friendly or anything like that, and, I just kinda thought to myself, it's like, "Man, I wanna do this," and lo and behold, I got into a car accident. Not my fault, somebody
Yeah.
T-boned me, and I ended up getting a little money for a, settlement. I think I was, 24 years old, 25 years old, and I went to my coach at the time, and I said, "Hey, you know, this shit's gonna blow up. Can I invest this, give you money, and we can go open a gym, a small gym, somewhere in a nicer part of town that, people can get to easy and, kids and things we can start teaching, training jujitsu and Muay Thai and doing all this stuff." So, lo and behold, that happened. It was a little crazy because I thought, at the time I was still fighting, I'd started fighting, and I thought that having my own gym was gonna be just a rad thing to do and have it this place
Still
that
inside fighting.
yeah, I be able to fight, I'll be able to train all day out of my own place, but quickly learned that, if it's like any other business, you have to run it as a business or that shit gets ugly real quick, and it got ugly real quick. My partners, my original coaches, they bailed on me, and then I had, luckily found some other people that wanted to step up, and then, the rest is kinda history. And, at that time, this is 2003, 2004, I would just luckily, I had Forrest Griffin living with me right after he got off The Ultimate Fighter, and I was able to kinda tag along with him everywhere he went. He was the big thing.
Mhm.
Um, And so I just went everywhere with him. And I met so many connections, and I ended up getting sponsors and people. And then, at the gym, whoever would give me money to put their name on the gym to keep the doors open is what I did. 22 years later, here we are.
So you mentioned, I think you already answered this question, but you mentioned getting into a car accident, you got the settlement money from it. Was Were you forced to stop fighting because of something that happened in the car
No,
accident, or the gym just became too much?
no, to be honest, when I started fighting, I knew I wanted to coach. I knew I wanted to do this as a
Interesting.
career.
Okay.
Like, I always had that sense. I'm like, I'm gonna be better as a business and a coach than I am as a fighter. I kinda got lost in the shuffle of my fighting career, like, as the fighting blew up here, I was always with big names, and I kinda got lost in the shuffle behind them and tagged along, and kind of my coaches, my gym, my original gym kinda fell apart, and everybody split and went their own way. So I kinda was just wandering around in the world of MMA, latching on to whoever I could. And I had some success early on, and I got, signed to The Ultimate Fighter, in season 7, and, 2 weeks before that, I tore my bicep tendon, off the bone. I still went and fought, with one arm and didn't work, but UFC paid for my surgery and everything, so that was good. Um, got signed for Strikeforce, and then some crazy stuff happened, and that fight got pulled literally 30 minutes before I was going. I got a short notice fight for UFC again, got my knee blown out to, shout out Matt Brown, thanks for that. Blew my knee out, ACL, full reconstruction. So I missed that opportunity. It just kinda started adding up. I think I had about 17, 18 fights, but it was injury after injury after injury, and then I actually linked up with Greg Jackson, um, I don't know, some time ago. And when Greg Jackson's like the gym was just sick, you had Cowboy, you had Tim Kennedy, you had, every name, Diego Sanchez, John Jones, all the top guys were there. And I actually started going out there, and he kind of was like mentoring. I helped one of his fighters on a TV show, and he kind of really took me under his wing and kind of started teaching me, things about coaching but also like fighting. And I had a choice at one point in time where I could have moved out there and gone full in fighting, but I had my gym, and I just always believed and knew that I was gonna get where we're at now. Um, and I had that decision. Like, you cannot it's very hard to be a fully committed fighter and a coach. Like, it just doesn't I just don't believe that that is a thing that works. Like, if you wanna be good at both of them, it's impossible. So I had to make a decision, and then, after all the injuries and all the stuff that was just racked up over the years, um, I think I made the right decision. Like,
Yeah.
after guys retire from fights, a lot of guys don't have anything to do, and I wasn't gonna be a world champion. I wasn't gonna be That wasn't even my goal. I was just fighting because I liked it, and, everybody was doing it. It was awesome, but I knew there was a bigger purpose for me, and, I made that decision and went. A lot of guys that used to beat me up as training partners, I ended up coaching and cornering them and, doing things over the years. So it turned out, like I said, I think it was a good decision for me to do that. But I just always kinda knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's really interesting and I would say almost unique because I feel like most fighters get to the end of their career and they're like, "Fuck, what do I do now?"
A lot.
And I guess I'll just coach. But for you to know at such an early age, I think it's a bit unique. Did you find being such a young coach? I mean, if you've been doing this for how old are you? Mid-40s?
45.
Right on. So
It would have been nice of you to say mid-30s. We'll take mid-40s.
37. You must have been like 25, right?
Yeah, so it was hard. I will say this, I came up, I think, harder than anybody else being so young and looked at as a training partner. I had to build everything from the ground up. I literally had to build my own fight team. I had to create fighters. I had to take amateurs and prove that I could do this all of the way to, there's multiple guys that had walked in my gym that had never fought before, not even Amy that I took all the way to the UFC. And some more were still there. So I had to prove my worth. And, there's a lot of big names in Vegas. Everybody comes to Vegas, and there's big, a couple of the big gyms and things, so I was always kind of in those shadows. And like I said, people looked at me different because I was a training partner. So I relied on, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to build my team. I'm going to build my own crew, and you guys are going to see. And that's eventually what happened. And then, like I said, in the end, a lot of the guys that used to, like, I train with ended up coming back and say, "Hey, will you, coach me, corner me, this, that." And just perseverance, over time. It took a long time, and I'm glad I did it that way because I've learned so much. Even the last couple, every year, something changes and you learn so much. And the last couple of years, through a little bit of, adversity of ups and downs and having some good things happen, having some bad things happen, really made me learn and even change like you said, when you came into the gym, the culture, the vibe, all those things it's so important. And you only learn that through experience. And I'm glad that I didn't come up under one coach or under one way because I train every fighter individually, differently, for what they need. And I don't have a certain set, way of here's the way you do it. So I've been able to kind of adapt and mold and do things differently. And it's been successful. And obviously it's worked out really well in the last couple of years. I've had a great staff. I have an awesome coaching staff now. That was one thing I had to learn the hard way, 'cause I was doing it all on my own. Kind of like we talked about before, it is hard to find good, trusting, loyal people that aren't, it's a cutthroat business now. Everybody's out to get their own. Everybody's trying to take what you built and, the shit talk you behind your back and trying to keep you down. And a lot of people don't want to see you be more successful than they are. So it is what it is, and you have to deal with that shit. But I feel like, we found the right crew and found the right thing. And now it's just turned out to be something really awesome.
On the same track as it's hard to be a gym owner. It's extremely hard to even turn a profit, right? Unless, maybe if you have do you guys have a pretty good kids program at this point? I know that that's
We have a
great.
we got over 900 students in our gym. So I'd say we probably have one of the bigger gyms in the country as far as student base. And it's growing. Like I said, I'm in the building, process of looking at buying, building and expanding and doing all that stuff. It is extremely hard business to get into. And I tell anybody that if you don't love it, especially coaching, just as a business is different. Like, but if you don't love coaching and you don't love this sport, it is difficult because you're gonna put in a lot of people think myself thought, oh, I should open a gym, everyone's gonna come. Put out so much money. And I'd say 15 of the 22 years that I've had probably weren't profitable. There was a point in time where I had a 20,000 square foot gym where I was working, two different jobs, working with doing 15 privates a day with regular people and coaching fighters to just try to pay the bills, to pay my own bills, and keeping the doors open. It's tough. It's tough. We're very fortunate now. You just have to have the right people to build the right culture. And it takes a long, hard time to do that. But tough. If you do it for the money, you're going to be very unhappy for a long time. And then
Yeah.
if you're blessed enough and fortunate enough to make it go, well, now I get to make a living, a good living, you know, mhm, pay my bills, my kid's life is good and my wife, everything is good now, through doing something I love to do, but it wasn't always like that.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I think a lot of us naturally have an idea of why fighters like to do what they do. You get glory, you get money, all the girls, like whatever it is. But for coaches, I think it can be a little bit more nebulous. What kept you going throughout those 15 years when you had to work 2 to 3 jobs? What was your why?
Well, I mean, I did get a pretty hot wife,
Yeah, there you go.
shout out Joanne Wood, through it, so I still did.
It helps.
Yeah, I did it for the girl. No, it just and that's why coaches and fighters, like fighters don't always make great coaches because fighting is such a selfish sport and you have to be selfish. It's about yourself and making that transition to jumping out into coaching where now it's a selfless deal where you're doing everything for the person. There's a lot of coaches and a lot of people out there that are jumping the in front of the cameras and hey, look at me. And that's okay. There's not a problem with that. Like, but if you're really doing this, you're doing it because you love to do it, you love the sport, and you want to see the other person. You want to see that person succeed. And if fame comes to you, like I always tell people, if people know my name or know my gym name, it's because I've done my job and that fighter and my team has been so successful that you cannot deny that. I just always, I don't know, coaching was just always such a puzzle to me of being able to figure out different personalities, different people, get them to work, get people that shouldn't have. I kind of made my career on building up some fighters that shouldn't have got as far as they got and going very successful in the highest levels in UFC and stuff. And that's what really kind of I think brought a lot of different people to me over the time. I don't know. I just always loved to do it. I just always loved being able to figure out that puzzle of somebody else's brain and see if I can get them to be successful. And it's a crazy roller coaster, lots of ups and lots of downs.
Yeah.
And you got to ride that roller coaster, and you got to enjoy the ups and you got to enjoy the downs and you got to be okay with everything. I always tell my guys before fights or before your career, it's the proverbial roller coaster. You buckle up and you know what you signed up for, and you better be okay with it, because if you're, you have a choice to throw your hands up and have fun and enjoy the highs and enjoy the lows, or you can sit there and piss your pants and cry and, look like a jackass. But the ride is crazy. But I've always, like I said, I've always enjoyed it. It's just something that naturally in me, just always loved to do. I don't know, just kind of came natural.
Those people are meant to be coaches.
Yeah, that just came natural. So
Is there a particular aspect that you can pinpoint as being one of the most rewarding?
I mean, obviously, winning is ultimately what we want to do.
Of course.
That is the goal. That is the payoff. But being able to see the good people, there's some good people in the sport and good fighters, and seeing people that bust their asses and do everything the right way and actually get credit for it and get the payoff. Because there's a lot of people in this sport doing the right thing, doing your best, doing everything perfect does not mean you're going to have success. It does not mean you're going to win a fight. It does not mean you're going to have a great career. There's a little bit of luck that goes into all this shit. And but when you see somebody, let's take Merab for example, for a guy who just busts his ass, and has done everything the hardest way possible, to see him get the success and the credit he deserves, and to still see him show up every day and do the same damn thing he was doing
Yeah.
before that. Now that he has the title, now that he is famous, now he's making money, to see him do the same thing. Those are the moments where you're just like, hell yeah, that's what it's for. Obviously, it's nice if they make money. We make more money too, so it's a good. It's a double-edged sword there. It's good. But yeah, just seeing the good people, seeing the guys that really put in the effort, that really want to do it and do the shit, seeing it pay off for them is one of the more rewarding things. And obviously, winning's the best. You go out and you win a fight. That's the best. There's nothing better than winning. This is what we do this for. This is what everybody wants to win in some form of life, or this or that. When you win, everybody loves you. You're doing great. When you lose, it's the worst fucking feeling in the world. And so, but just seeing it pay off for the good guys. We have a really good crew and a good group of fighters that I genuinely love. There's some good guys that it has paid off for, and some good guys that I hope it pays off for. But that's always the best.
Yeah, Syndicate's in its moment right now. I feel like the last couple years.
It's funny. I've heard that multiple times over years. Over like
Yeah.
20, we've had plenty of moments where it's like, we've had 10 fight win streaks in the UFC, 10 years ago. And I've been doing this, like I said, since Forrest. I used to corner Evan Tanner, 20 some years ago in the UFC, like doing this for a long time. But the difference is we're sustaining. The difference is we're sustaining. We have a team, we have a crew, and we're doing it on literally the highest levels. Working with some of the champions, and obviously having Rob get success, and being able to work with Wei Lee for her last few fights and these things. And I would definitely say we are having our moment, but I don't think that moment's going to go away. It's only going to keep getting better. Are we going to lose fights? Of course. That's just the nature of the game. If you think you're going to win them all, but we are definitely, I think we have found our groove, found the right team, the right culture, the right people. It is hitting on all cylinders.
You mentioned the high highs and the low lows. And certainly that's a lot for any fighter to go through, but that's such a huge emotional weight to take on as a coach for, I don't know, 50 plus fighters. I mean, you're not only, giving them career advice, you're being there actually during fights, you're managing their camps. There's high highs and low lows, and it's a really big emotional weight, I feel, to be also a mentor for some, almost like a fatherly figure I see in some coaches. Like,
Oh yeah.
how do you balance that and stay centered?
It is crazy. It's a 24-hour a day job. My phone does not stop ringing or texts. And there are guys that I am, crazy enough. It really is crazy for me to like put myself in that position, because I still think I'm like a 17-year-old kid,
Yeah.
skateboarding, playing guitar, whatever, in my mind,
Yeah.
but now I'm literally looked at as a father figure to some guys. And I've had some guys recently tell me that. And, it's such a special thing to be able to, be for in somebody's life like that, and to help them, and to hopefully see that kind of success. It's something that I really do hold dearly, and I don't take for granted. And I do really like every single fighter. We have 65 pros, 65 plus pros, I think, right now. Another 50 amateurs plus right now at the gym. And if I can show up and be in the corner of every one of them, I will. If it makes a difference. I was just talking to my wife before this, like if I'm not at a fight and someone loses, it like hurts me because I feel, oh my God, I could have made a difference if I had told him to do this. But it's also part of learning to let, these other coaches
Mhm.
grow and be there and do stuff and having the belief that they're going to be as good as I know that they will be. Um, it is a very hard balance, especially with a wife and child and, not wanting to, that's one thing I will not miss out on my kids, life. Like I'm there for them as much when we have him every week, it's like I spend time with him and play game. I make sure he knows I'm still there. Make sure the wife, we're doing date nights and doing things. 'Cause that's something I don't want to look back and go, man, I, you know, wasn't there for
Yeah.
my kid, but you do miss things. You miss things like it is part of the job that we sign up for. And thankfully, excuse me, my wife, being a fighter in the UFC for 10 years and fighting her whole life pretty much,
She gets it.
she gets it. So she's very, like, very understanding about that. But it takes a toll on anything. Vince Morales just fought, lost, and then we just got a short notice fight. Now we got to fly to Mexico City in 2 weeks, and that falls on Daddy Day for my kids' school, and I'm like, oh my God, it crushes me. But he also knows the work too. He knows like he grew up in the gym. He knows I'm gonna make that up to him. He knows what the importance is, and he knows it also it's part of him maybe having the life that he has now. This is the job, it is the job and you have to sign up for it and you take it as it comes, and it's just something like I said, you try to guide these kids and these men and women and to do the best that they can. And like I said, sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But it is a very, it is a 100% involved and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you really, like I said, you love what you want to do and you're going to go far with it, it is what it is. Any coach in any successful sport, it's a lot.
I'd imagine there's this balance between, like, yes, you have to ride the high highs and low lows with them. You can't disconnect, but you also can't, let a loss just drag you down
Yeah,
as well because you have other fighters.
for
You
sure.
need to be there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things over the last few years I've started. Luckily, I'm very fortunate to have a great, you know, um, crew of coaches that I look up to and guys that are doing it on the highest levels in big gyms and, like Greg Jackson and guys at ATT and guys over that I'm able to talk to all the time as I see them and say, hey, how do you do this? And I've learned a lot from them on how to balance that stuff. And so we're constantly adding and subtracting things, and we make sure that the one thing I've taken on over the years, last couple of years, is making sure that we take ownership and accountability as coaches in the wins and the losses. We have a fighter that loses. Afterwards, we're going to kind of do a debriefing. We sit down in the room. We have a little conference room, TV, and get the coaches in and watch the film back and say, hey, what could we do better? It's always for me, what can I do better? Even if it wins, what can I do better for you?
Yeah.
What can I do better for the warm up, for the diet, for this, for the weight cut? What is it? Let me know. We're always trying to improve because it is, the good thing about MMA is you can't figure it out. It can't be solved. It's a constantly evolving thing, So you just have to make sure that, you're there for them when they're up and you're there for them when you're down, and you show up as much as possible. You answer that phone. You're there at the fights. You make sure that they're taken care of. And like I said, I've learned the hard way sometimes too. I've lost fighters over years of not being able to be, when it was just me, being able to be there for everybody, and guys didn't feel, they were taken care of. And I get it. There's fighters that I'm responsible for, that I didn't give them the attention that they needed. And some guys need a little too much attention or feel that they deserve it. But that also comes back to the culture, how you bring up the gym and you let them know, hey, this is how we do things here. If you want to be part of that, great. If you don't fit it. There's a gym down the road you can go to. There's a gym over there, do whatever, And so it just comes from building the culture and making sure that we're all there for each other.
And I met some of them when I was there yesterday, but how many coaches do you have on board right now?
So for the MMA coaches, I think we have 6 assistant coaches, that are there. Wrestling coach. Let's see, I've got wrestling from ATC, my boxing coach, Danny Garcia, Max Suarez, MMA coach, Dom Polaris, Chris Trammell is our head, striking coach over there for the Muay Thai program, and Shane Shapiro. So I think that's all my guys. So like 6, I think, that come in and kind of help do everything, and it's so awesome because 3 years ago, just me and maybe one of their 2 guys that weren't really doing much. And so that's where, like I said, it ran into some problems being stretched too thin. Now it's such an amazing thing to be able to have, you know, Danny and Dom and Texas and me and Australia and Max, somewhere else, and everybody's winning, So it's really it's so awesome. Like I sit back and tell my wife all the time, I'm like, man, this is great, to be able to do that and to be able to trust these guys and um, so it's a really great staff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Weekends must be insane. The group chat must be crazy.
Every day, we've built even my assistant Emily, we've talked to, she's kind of taking the team manager role. We're literally every day my phone blows up with 400 texts of, hey, we got this, we have sparring time, we set all the guys' sparring times up so they get their cage time in, and the coaches are coaching. And so it's like every day there's something to list, like meetings day, we have tape days, we have um, our weekly coaches meetings, we have the debriefings, we have, like the film studies where we're sitting down and doing that. We have the camp meetings before camp starts. We sit down with the fighter and break down, hey, here's what we're going to do for you. Here's the time, here's the date, here's what, just figure out their camp. Here's who we're using. So it literally is like, I'm really trying to um, run it like a professional sports team. And it's hard because, I don't have a professional sports background like
Yeah.
that, so there's guys that do. So we're taking, like Dom on tape days, Dom will go home, get who film we have to study. He'll cut it up, comes in and brings it in on his pad, hooks up the TV, and boom, we're watching tape. And I'm like, man, that's fucking awesome. Like I would have never done that, like I would have struggled. And so like everybody's getting their roles and it's really cool. So the goal is to try to run it as professional as we can and have the fighter not have to do anything but show up and have us train them, you know? And that should always be the easiest part of the day for the fighter is you show up, we yell at you, we tell you what to do. Done. All the hard shit comes outside the doors, your family, your life, your kids, your dogs, your wife, husband, whatever. That's the stuff that's the tricky part.
Balancing all that. Do you have time for anything else?
Yeah, it really feels like I do not stop, but we go to, we're huge hockey fans. We go to my kid plays hockey, so he's 2 or 3 days a week at hockey practice. Make sure we go to those, watch his games. We actually go to we have season tickets to the Golden Knights, so we go to the Golden Knights, season tickets to the Raiders, huge sports fan. So I try to do all that shit I can. Like I said, keep it date night with the wifey, make sure that we're, keeping connection and doing that stuff. Huge video game fan. But it really does come down to literally feeling like there is no time left in the day.
I've heard you talk a lot in interviews and a bit now about how important gym culture is to you and how you totally revamped the gym a few years ago to align with a specific culture. I would love to know what that word means. Like, what is correct gym culture to you? What are you striving towards?
I think it's different towards everybody. Obviously, you have to go with what your beliefs are and what you're trying to get across. Like, I want to come into the gym and have an environment, which I think most people do, where they feel, oh man, this is awesome to be here. I want people to want to come and hang out and be there. A few years ago, coming up, like we talked about when I was young, I kind of let a lot of things go that I shouldn't have, or let fighters get away with things that they shouldn't have been able to get away with, attitudes, just sparring etiquette, showing up late, doing all this bullshit because I was not confident in going, hey man, you know what? Do it this way or get out, like leave. Those are your options. And so letting guys get away with a lot of like things that are now non-negotiables for me, things that I would have never let, you know, built a culture that was, guys showing up late, guys being in, guys being dickheads and sparring, guys mouthing off, guys this, that, and
Yeah.
the other, and I had to part ways with some very high level, high ranked, fighters at the top of the game where I'm like, this doesn't work for me. And once I started making that decision of like, we bust our asses, we train hard, and it shows in the wins and the things we're getting. We train hard, but there's things like being a dickhead partner and trying to knock your partners out every day and just sparring every day for pointless bullshit. Great. If that works for you, great. But we're going to have, tactical training sessions where we're going to learn and we're going to train hard. We're going to do both. And you're going to build your partners up and not break them down. You're not here to have an ego of like, oh, I'm the best guy on the mat. And, like there's guys in this town that are killers on the mat, and they go out there and they fight like shit, fight like pussies and do whatever, and say the exact opposite. There's plenty of them, and so it doesn't matter what you're doing in the room, it's how you get the results that are going to end up in the fight. And I think that if you have an environment where people want to be there and they want to help their training partners get better, and they know they're not going to get their dick knocked in the dirt every time they go in, it provides that, oh man, sense of, I'm going to get I'm going to get what I need to get. I'm going to train, get in shape. And I like to go to this place and I like to hang out. It's just building a team. Not everybody has to be best friends. I don't care if everybody's best friends, but you're going to get along on my mat. You're not going to be disrespectful. There's guys that blow up and they have fights on the mat all the time. And guess what? That's going to happen. I tell my guys, you are in a sport where we are here to literally beat the shit out of each other. You're training to go and kill another man in a cage. Like, it's testosterone, estrogen filled, chaos. And so if it happens on the mat, like, hey, you get into it. But it's what you do after. Like, make sure that you don't walk away. You're not leaving this gym and coming back tomorrow with, I'm going to get that guy and we're going to green light him. Make sure that if it gets out of control, you hurt your partner, you're the one taking him to the hospital, you're the one, just square it up, be a teammate, and if you don't want to do that, that's okay. But that's not what we're doing, and so everybody kind of starts to fit into that. We do a lot of team building stuff. We have outings, we get together for barbecues, we have fight nights, we all do this stuff and everybody supports. And it's just a great vibe. Everybody, even starting from our classes, my coaches and the teach the jujitsu or the striking classes, the vibe is great. Like I think we're probably one of the only teams, big MMA teams that have a successful, incredible, like jujitsu team inside of an MMA gym.
Yeah.
Like it's got its own culture. There's 100 people on the jiu-jitsu mat every night, it's crazy. And they love it, and that's just something, like I said, you just have to set your standards, show up on time. If the guys show up late, okay, here's the deal. You're doing burpees for 5 minutes over there, depending on how late you are. You show up a certain time over this, you ain't training today. You keep doing it, boom, you're suspended, off. Don't, come back when you can get your shit together. You have to show up for a certain amount of practices. Don't just show up and after your fight, take your time off, but get your ass back in the gym and make sure you're helping your partners get ready for their fights. So everybody holds everybody accountable, and it's just, works real good. And then it's very easy to weed out when someone comes in. Like most of the managers and people that send me fighters, they know already this guy's going to work really good over here. There's not very many guys that come in, train with us and go, it doesn't work. They've already been kind of been vetted by our guys and go, this guy's going to work here, so it's pretty cool.
All right, guys, this show is sponsored by the best sportsbook in the game, MyBookie. Look, I love watching fights, right? Yes, obviously. But my absolute favorite way to kind of up the ante a little bit, make things a little bit more exciting, and I talk about this all the time on my channel, by the way, is adding a little wager. All right, little bit of backstory. I started my combat sports journey in Muay Thai. And in Thailand, you can't have Muay Thai without sports betting. They're hand in hand. And I have so many fond memories of betting on a fight with my Thai trainer or with random people sitting next to me at a show. When I tell you it is an instant way to make friends and raise the stakes a little bit in a fight. MyBookie gives you the modern 21st century version of this. Other than getting into the ring yourself, this is the next best way to feel like you have a real personal stake in the fight. And whether you're competing with your friends or placing your bets solo, MyBookie is the place to do it. And on a personal note, I love MyBookie, okay? They have been so supportive of this project, so great to work with, and I really can't say that about every brand. Right now, you can get a 50% bonus on a deposit up to $1,000 with promo code Kennedy. That is Kennedy. So if you want to support the show, maybe make some bonus money on the side, this is the place to do that. All right, back to our show.
So along with that, I'm sure everybody always asks you what you look for in a fighter, and I do want to hear your answer on that. But have there been times, I'm assuming yes, where you've had a fighter come in, want to fight for Syndicate, want to work under you, and you're just like, you know what, it's not a good fit?
Yeah, multiple times. I mean, it doesn't happen too much anymore. I fortunately for me now, I'm able to kind of say, I don't think I want to work with you. But there might be some other coaches at our gym, as long as they fit the mold and the vibe of what we're trying to, of our team, then maybe, and that's something, like I said, I've had to let go of, where maybe they like working with one of the other coaches, one of the other coaches better than me. And I've had to go, okay, cool, but they're still a good training partner for our guys. And not everybody I don't have to be the main guy for everybody. Everybody's going to kind of have their guy, as long as we're working as a team together. And it's not this guy is that guy is this guy. No, it's Syndicate's guys. But I've had some people, where it's just like, you've definitely stuck through and worked with them and done some shit where you're just like, oh my God, this is miserable. I don't want to do this. In the past, I don't do it anymore. I really don't. So I always tell any fighter, hey, come in and try out for a week. Come in, do everything for a week. Let's work together. And at the end of the week, let's have a talk. Or you just say, hey man, I'm in. And if you fit with our team and we fit with your team and everybody else likes it, great, we're golden. Or just disappear, like you don't ever have to come back again. But yeah, I fortunately, now, like I said, I get to be a little more picky and choosy about.
So along with that, what do you look for in someone that you see potential in, someone that you want as part of the team?
Obviously work ethic is always great. Somebody who has a great work ethic is something that's going to be there. Um, there's guys that are hard workers. There's guys that are super talented. There's guys that are hard workers and super talented. And when you get that kind of go, then you start to look like, okay, this dude's got something. You get that hard worker, super talented, and they're ambitious and they're moldable and they're able to learn. One of the biggest things is, are you able to teach somebody, or when you coach them or corner them or work with them, are they able to listen and learn? Because that's one of the big things. I don't want to be in anybody's corner and just be a cheerleader anymore. I want to work to help you get somewhere. I want to win together. Hopefully not lose together, but if it happens, but
Yeah.
I want to be a piece of the puzzle that helps you get there. And so if someone can't listen, or you don't get through to them, or they're just that person or like, I always love the thing when you start, somebody come in and say, yeah, I want to do this and I want to be coached. And okay, I've never had a coach for, okay, cool. So here's the thing, I was doing this. I want you to do it this. Well, yeah, but I don't do it that way. The fuck are you,
Yeah,
what am I there for? Like, okay, well, keep doing it that way. That's not working for you, like, and I always tell my guys, if you have a better way of doing something, not every time. I'm very open. It's a two-way street when we coach. But there's some guys that are just, yeah, well, I don't want to do it that way, or I wasn't doing that because he was doing this, or da, 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 da. And I'm like, listen, I get it. But I'm looking from the outside watching it. I'm not just throwing random shit out there and taking guesses at like, oh, hey, maybe you should do this,
Yeah.
It's a pretty educated guess. I've been doing this for a while now. So the willingness to learn, the willingness to be coached is one of the biggest things. If you can't, then what's the point? Like, I don't have to work with anybody. I don't need the money. I don't need the fame or the notoriety. I want to be able to help somebody, and I want them to feel like we can help them, and if it's not me, maybe one of the coaches, but um, you know, that is probably the number one thing. Merab is always a great one. I like Merab blows my mind. It's always one of my favorite references to this is, he's been around our gym 5+ years, something like that. A long time, a few fights before the Aldo fight. He's coming in, coming out, but he was going back going back to New York, coming out, doing this. And he's just this crazy little tornado of like the Tasmanian devil. And
Yeah.
doesn't seem like, they would be very coachable, and I let him do his thing because he's just such a great partner and he's a good dude. And we didn't start working together until, like I said, about the Aldo fight, where after that he came and he was just like, hey man, this is my gym. I want to be here. I want you to coach. I want to learn. And so we started working, and immediately, like in class, it's so funny because if when we're running an MMA class and I'll show something, Rob will be over in the corner and we're drilling, and he's essentially just beating somebody up or sparring. I don't even know if he's doing the move half the time. And I always used to go over there, but then when it would come to his sparring time, he would do everything exactly the way that it was shown or told. And I started catching this. If we worked, maybe he would do it or maybe not. But when it came to sparring or the fight, the dude, he learned different, so I learned how to teach him. And I learned, okay, this guy learns different. Probably one of the most coachable guys, even though sometimes it doesn't even look like it. It's probably one of the most, it like blew my mind. Cause like I said, what you see in a fight is kind of what you're getting in a room too. He's a madman. The dude just trains all the time, but
Yeah.
so coachable, so loves to learn, but just does it in a different way. And it like took me a little way to learn that and figure it out. But now obviously the results, you tell that guy to do something, he might not do it right then and there, but when it's time to actually do it and make it work in sparring, the fight, spot on, So coachableness and just like I said, willing to want to learn and work. That's always the number one thing.
I actually asked my community before this if they had any questions for you, and the top question was like, how the fuck is Merab able to have cardio like that?
Man, I think working hard, but there's just a natural thing that's just in him. Like I've never seen anybody do that. I'm not kidding.
Crazy.
He will do, like for the the Umar fight when he was sick on antibiotics, messed up back. The dude would still go in there, and you would never guess it. He'd do 6, 7 rounds in his cage rounds. Hard, hard. We're talking about like high level dudes, Aljo, guys that are at the top of the heap, like brought in all these killers, and he's just killing them. And each round, he's getting better and better and better and better. And then, I'm like, okay, Merab, you're done, you're out. And then because we have open sparring on the mats and the guys that are fighting, he'll sneak off in the corner and do another 4 rounds. He'll do 10 rounds without even breathing hard. And then sneak back into the gym later and do it again in the back room. People call me like, hey, just so you know, Rob's sparring again. I'm like, what the fuck? What? It is just something natural, something he's built. And a lot of that comes from this, is the willpower. The dude has willpower and he has a mind that he can control. And a lot of that is your body, like what this tells everything else to do, it's going to do it. And if you have a strong mind, which he does, I think it's a combination of just genetic hard work and having the mind to be able to tell his body, we're doing this, and I don't give a shit how you feel or whatever. We're still doing it.
Yeah, and damn is it paying off. You can see exactly how those 10 to 20 rounds are translating into all of his fights.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
And again, I've said this to him. He's still learning. He's still green in MMA. The next evolution that you're going to see from Rob when we go through probably quite a few rematches is we're going to start finishing people. I want Morab to start working on finish. He could have finished all these guys before. He just starts having so much fun. He's just like, I'm gonna kiss you or slap you, laugh at it. Like, no, let's sub him. Let's pound him out. So that's the next evolution, and we're working on that. And a lot of people are gonna be surprised, but the dude is still just green in the sport, and he's learning, and he's just getting better, and that should be scary for the rest of those guys.
I think the fact too, and I don't know, I may be wrong on this, but it does seem like he's fighting from a place that he just loves it. He doesn't have this like anger that he's pushing through like I see some fighters do. He just seems like he loves what he does.
Once the weight cut is over, which he absolutely hates, once the weight cut is over and all the bullshit's done, all the press conferences, the day he wakes up and fight night, the night before, and then the way when he wakes up, it's just a different human being. He's so happy. He's just I know, like he's just fired up, loves it. Like
Yeah.
everybody goes through the emotions in the back before you go do it, but he is just a guy who really enjoys it, really loves it. And you can see it. He's next level, man. Like he's gonna, like I said, I truly believe he'll hold that belt for a long time.
I actually wanted your thoughts on the way that you approach matchmaking or accepting fights. Because, I mean, obviously your record's important. A lot of gyms will only take fights if it looks like you have a pretty good chance at winning. Syndicate, I feel like like Morab has not had an easy time up there to that belt. He has fought everybody. Khalil took that fight against Alex. I don't know if other gyms would.
On the come up, you get to choose a little bit. Like when guys are coming up, you get to maybe pick 1 or 2 fights. But if you keep passing fights and passing fights, you're never going to have any. And you need to have those tests. You need to get tested on the way up so that when you're there, when you reach the time, like you'll see these guys that have these 17-0 records and they've killed a bunch of, they're can crushers. They smash all these guys. When you come up, when you fought legit guys in your training, doing what you need to do, at the high levels, you don't really get a whole lot of choice. And someone like Merab, like I'll never put one of my guys, if I have a choice, I'll never tell one of my guys, hey, you should take this fight if I think they're going to lose it, but like that doesn't really happen much.
Yeah.
Take that shit. But like with Merab, his style and the way he came up, his personality at the beginning and language barriers, he wasn't going to be, I don't think anybody believed, losing the fights, his first 2 or whatever in the UFC. And I don't think anybody believed he would be where he's at now, except for him. And, he had the path, obviously, I've said this before, harder than any single person, and now, like, the dude is hilarious. He's got so much personality. It's paying off, they're seeing the vibes and, he has entertaining fights. He's going out and building, even Umar, we were the underdog, people just don't believe in it. Great. Keep it that way. Keep believing these guys are going to beat us. Keep believing when someone hands me a fight like that, I'm like, oh yeah, we can get it.
Yeah.
We can get it. Same thing with O'Malley. We were supposed to die in 30 seconds. We were supposed to take a flying knee, but in the first bell and just die. I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see how this happens. I didn't see how it was happening with Umar, And so that kind of stuff, that's what gets me up, going where I'm like, okay, this is good. It's figuring it out. Now we got Khalil with Jamal Hill in the main event. We started camp today. It's like, oh yeah, this is great. I love a challenge, and most of our guys love a challenge too. We're having a tougher time getting guys fights right now.
Is there ever a point where the media gets to you where you're like, "Oh, fuck, maybe O'Malley, like, maybe he is really good?"
That was the first time.
Yeah.
That was the first time on that schedule. The sphere was such a crazy big. Everybody's like, I don't know what it's gonna be. There's gonna be dragons breathing fire everywhere.
Yeah.
Like it was such a crazy thing. And the build up when you watch fights like that, like I have been in title fights with Whaley before already. So that moment, whatever. But like how hyped O'Malley was the first time in I don't get nervous in fights. I never get nervous in the corner. Like it's just the crowd doesn't bother me. Boos, cheers, doesn't bother me at all. Just super hyper focused. But that was the first time every day, not one single announcer, not one single analyst voted for Morab. Not one. Everyone's like, yep, Morab's dead. I don't see it. I don't see how he closes the gap. I don't see this. I don't see that. Every single one of them. And like, I just never, our whole team was just like, I don't get it. Like, how is this guy? He's not going to hit us. Like, he's not going to get it. And like I said, I also have I'm also on the other side getting to see what Merab does in a room. So I know how good when it comes to getting in the cage with him, he surprises everybody. And I'll take that underdog role and keep taking it because I hope everybody keeps betting against us. Beautiful. But like, that was the first fight where I was like, oh my God, like fight day, kind of woke up, was like, or actually it was fight week. I was like, man, can we win this? Like, is he gonna die in this fight? Like you're watching all the shit on the UFC every night. You're buying into the hype. You're watching the countdowns. You're watching it.
Second guess it.
You're like, oh my God, I wasn't even second guessing. But I was like, am I missing something? But it was crazy because it really led to me. Like I said, it was a funny thing. I went back like a few days before the fight, and I went back and I watched all of Merab's fights again. And I was like, what the fuck are you thinking, bro? Like, he's going to murder this guy. Like, this is not going to be. But it led to me picking up a couple little key things in the fight that actually, I went the next day and told Merab, hey, we're doing this in this fight. I just saw it. And he's like, oh, yeah, I like it. He's like, make sure you yell that at me. And it fucking worked. And it was so good. So it actually worked out as a blessing, like, where, picking some things up. But that was the first time where I was like, ooh, this is crazy. Like, the world thinks we're going to die.
Just I want to clarify. It no means meant that you're putting your fighters in bad matchups, but it's something that I really respect. That like Merab took every fight. Like he worked his way up. That Khalil fight, probably my favorite fight out of the last year, and I mean that. I got emotional during that fight.
We all did. That was another one. I legit really believe that Khalil could and still can beat Pereira. Pereira's a monster. Regardless of whatever just happened, like that's a guy, like I've said it time and time again, seeing him a person, seeing what he does and how he does it is something special. In fights like that he just lost with Anklov, like shit like that happens sometimes, and I truly believe you're going to see him come back and, do something gnarly after
Scary again.
Yeah. But, Khalil believes in himself. And a lot of times it's too is like getting these guys, making sure that they can get to the level and like not talent and toughness will take them far, but making sure that self-belief is there when the time is ready. That's where everything lines up at the right time. And even though we didn't win that fight, he still kind of won. His stock went up. Uncle Ive just talked shit about him right after the fight. I was like, hey man, that's a good thing. If the champ who just won, you're the first name he's shit talking, perfect. Like we're there. So I think after this Jamal Hill fight, we're gonna see some good things come out of it.
I was telling Robinson on the way over that I feel like Uncle Ive is getting credit for beating Carrera, which he deserves, but Khalil fought a much scarier version of Pereira, and I think that even though he didn't beat him, he was the first person to show that he could be beat.
Yeah, I think that like with Pereira, I think he actually really trained for Khalil. I think he really trained, put in camps. To be honest, I don't know how much I trained for this. I wasn't part of that, but I can tell you that everywhere I was, I saw him and his coaches. They were traveling a lot. They were gone. They were all over the place. I don't know how you get much of a camp. And then you can't get a camp, but proper camping when you're in Australia for 2 weeks, when you're here for 2 weeks, you're there for 2. Like I was just like, then you got a fight coming up, and so I don't know how much they trained for. Either it was he did two things. He either overtrained and was so afraid of the takedown that he wanted to stop the takedown more than anything and lost the fight that, or he just undertrained and didn't have a proper camp to get it done. But I can tell you it was one of those two things. And I think that, being the champ that he is, I don't think I'll make that mistake the second time.
Was there any part of Khalil you think that was like, fuck, I wish I had that out? Like,
Well, I mean, obviously, like, yeah, we'd love to. I talked to Pereira a couple days after the fight. I ran into him somewhere, and he very nice. He was just like, man, he's like, Khalil will beat everybody else in the division. He'll beat everybody. I was like, so well, why didn't you just let him beat you? Like, why don't you give us an off night?
helpful.
Yeah, it would have been great. Like, but yeah, I mean, everybody can be beat and usually will be beat at some point in time. Sometimes styles make fights. Sometimes somebody just has an off night and you have an on night, and you just never know.
So I know we only have a few more minutes left. I have a question. This is out of left field, but I thought it was a very interesting question. Every fighter has a point in their career, right, where they're like, is it time to hang them up? It's a heavy decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you always let fighters come to that conclusion on their own? Or because we see fighters like Tony Ferguson, fighters that maybe are being a bit too stubborn?
There are times that you need to have that talk, but you have to have, the fighter has to be kind of saying the things that come into that. You never want to pull that trigger too early.
Yeah.
Because then if there is something left in the tank, there's, fighters where you could kill that, or you ruin a relationship. There's fighters that I've had very recently saying, listen, I've had this talk in the last 6 months with a couple people. If you don't start training and performing in the gym and doing what you need to do, maybe because you've lost the fire, you've been doing this so long, and taking it serious and showing us that you still can and want to do this, then I don't know how much longer we can be aboard and be on board with supporting, the performances, or you're going out and you're getting hurt. Like, I don't want to see you become a vegetable.
Yeah.
And it is a shitty conversation. And sometimes it turns, or sometimes the guys are like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's, yeah, okay. And sometimes it lights a fire under their ass, or sometimes they, sit back and go, shit, it is a tough conversation. You have to always kind of look at, read the room and look at how they're talking, how they're acting. And it's a shitty thing to go through, like
Yeah.
my wife, fortunately, she just knew. She's like, I'm going to do these last 2 fights and I'm done. She's like, I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired of the weight cuts. I'm tired of all this stuff. I've done it long enough. And fortunately, she was able to go out on a 2-fight win streak and retire.
That's rare.
Yeah, and retire,
Yeah.
and set it up the way she wanted to set
That's
it up.
amazing.
And she could have came back. She still gets offers. She still gets offers. And I'm like, babe, it's good money, But it is a shit conversation to have, but you do want to have it with people that, maybe aren't into it anymore.
Yeah. So I don't want to end on a fucking bummer note. What you mentioned moving into a bigger facility. What else is in the future for Syndicate? The next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, right now, I mean, the facility we're in, we're actually looking at potentially buying the entire building that we're in currently. That is the potentially next move. Or we're also looking at a couple places that might even be bigger. The location we're at right now is amazing. Right next to the PI, it's by the freeway. It's easy to get to. I love it. I don't want to move all that bullshit again. So it makes sense. But I just think we're going to keep refining and defining what it is that we want as a team. And we're just keep getting better. And like I said, I always have the urge to, like, I want to be considered one of the best when all this is done. I want to hand this down to either my son or one of the other fighters. I want Syndicate to go far past me. I don't want it to be just like, oh, I'm done. And I want it to be something that carries on for hopefully the life of the sport, and I see, like, we're really, so right now is a great upswing, and I think we're going to stay on it. My goal is to have us be considered one of the best teams in the world. And I think that we're,
That's amazing. Well, I have like 20 more questions, but we're close to out of time. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate. I know how busy you are. So I'm really excited to see what everyone's going to do over the next year.
And that wraps up our episode with John. Okay, I did forget to ask him where people could find him in the interview, but you can find him on Instagram at BigwoodMMA702 and also follow the Syndicate page at Syndicate MMA. Also, please give me a follow. It's Kennedy Louise on all platforms. And if you could go the extra mile and comment and subscribe, that would really help me get this project off the ground. All right, don't forget to tell me what you thought about this episode, and I will see you on the next one.